This gospel reminds me, although it's the feast of Our Lady, the Basilica of Our Lady of what we call Mary Major, the major church dedicated to Our Lady in Rome. We'll talk about that in a second. But this gospel always reminds me of someone talking to Jesus about his mother. Okay, that's what's going on. So he's preaching away, and the woman says, "Blessed are the womb that bore you." Okay, and Jesus makes that clear. You are my people. You are, anyone who does the word of God is blessed. But it reminds me of a story. Years ago, when I was first, maybe the second year ordained, it was the first Easter I was a priest. That's what it was. The pastor of the church of St. Rose of Lima in East Hanover, New Jersey, asked me because I'm an artist, asked me if I would make a banner of the resurrected Christ for Easter Vigil and hang it in the sanctuary. So I said, well, I can't do it alone, I have no time, but if you give me a few people to work with, I'll direct them and we could do it together. So sure enough, somebody brought the cloth, somebody brought the glue and the iron and the sewing machine and all that good stuff. And the people who volunteered were all women. Okay, so every Sunday during Lent, we would go downstairs to the church hall, lay out the material and put the organization together, and I'd paint the face and the body, and they'd sew this and follow instructions. It took all of Lent to finish. It was huge. So, okay, Easter Vigil comes, and my parents are at the Mass, because it was my first Easter Mass, and people came up to them, and I introduced them to my mother and father. One woman, Ellen Grauer, says to my mother, she says, Rose, she says, I'm sure there's a woman who gets down on her knees every night and thanks God that your son Louis is a priest. And my mother, she was really down to earth, says, believe me, that's not me. I don't get on my knees every night to thank God about Louis. She says, oh, no. I didn't mean you, Rose. I meant the woman who would have married him. She said, because he's a tyrant and he tells us what to do and he controls us. So she's praying for the woman who would have married me. No such woman exists. Okay, so that's just a little aside because of the gospel. But the feast is beautiful. The feast is beautiful. It's dedicated to the Basilica, one of the first ones built in Rome, dedicated to Mary. It is the first dedicated to Mary, and it's the major basilica, so it's called in Italian Santa Maria Maggiore, which is the major church of Mary. Story goes, right after the Council of Ephesus, which was 431, a new decree came out of that council that Mary is the carrier of Jesus. Jesus is God. So they gave her the title Theotokos. Theotokos, as the Greeks say. God carrier. Okay? She is not only God carrier, but Theotokos means mother of God. Okay. There was a lot of controversy about that. That's how it eventually got settled and decided at a council. All the bishops come together and made a decision. Mary is the mother of God. Jesus happens to be God. So a wealthy man in Rome has a dream, and he comes to the Pope, I think it was an Honorius, and he says to the Pope, right after the council, not immediately, but in that period, says to the Pope, I had a dream last night, here it is, August, and I had a dream that snow was falling in Rome. And it fell in the shape of the outline of a church. So Honorius says, oh, nice thought, I'll keep that in mind, say a prayer for you and all that good stuff. Well, then Honorius had the same dream, and he was told in the dream, build the church according to the outline of the snow. And indeed, he went over to that area, and it was the Esquiline Hill, one of the 7 hills of Rome. And that morning, snow fell in the shape of the church, the outline of the church, the nave, the transept, and so on. And to this day, after the Gloria at Mass, snow falls from the church, not real snow, rose petals, white rose petals. So if you go online and go to probably YouTube would have it, right after the Gloria is sung in the Basilica, petals fall down in honor of the miracle of the snow, which builds that church. And that's why Mary has the title of Our Lady of the Snows, because of that, not because of snow that falls out here. And the church is built. It is a magnificent church. It is so beautiful. And in the church, there's an icon. And the icon is much bigger than this, but this is the icon. It's called Santa Maria de Popolo Romani, Our Lady of the People of Rome. And when His Holiness, as a matter of fact, His Holiness is going to Slovakia this weekend. When His Holiness is going on a trip, I know John Paul did it, and Francis does it as well, they go to the shrine in the Basilica and say their prayers in front of this icon. Interesting thing about the icon, the tradition is it was painted by St. Luke. So again, there's so many levels of tradition to it. It's not this small, it's bigger, not humongous, but it's big, and it's ornate in its frame. So when Francis goes on a trip, he goes to Santa Maria Maggiore, says his prayer to Our Lady for a safe trip and a return. And sure enough, this is an image of the icon, Santa Maria Maggiore. We'll put her here because I want you to, and I put the flowers there with little white baby's breath, I guess they call it, because it reminds me of snow. So it's another way for us to respect, understand, get in touch with Mary, Mother of God. And I think, personally, I like her a lot. I mean, I am very close to her. She's close to me, I should say. I'm close to her, too. I was ordained on her feast day, the Immaculate Conception, and my whole history as a child growing up and going to the seminary was always Marian. I went to the grammar school, Our Lady of the Holy Rosary, went to college, and the chapel was in the Immaculate Conception. Graduated and went to the seminary. The first seminary I went to was Immaculate Conception. The second seminary I went to was St. Mary's in Baltimore, Maryland. And the first assignment I received when I came back to the diocese as a deacon was Our Lady of the Lake in Lake Sparta, New Jersey. So when the bishop said to me, "Hey Louis," because he had a very deep voice, Bishop Casey, "Hey Lou, when do you want to get ordained?" I said, "How about December 8th?" Now, every priest in our tradition had been ordained in May because that's when the studies ended, and they went to the home diocese and got ordained in May. Of course, I got to be a little bit of a pill. So I said, "Bishop, I have to finish my studies at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, so let me extend it a little bit, and how about if I get ordained in December?" So he opens up his calendar, he said, "Okay, what day in December?" I said, "How's December 8th, Feast of the Immaculate Conception?" It was a Saturday. "Perfect, okay, 10:15. So I got ordained 10:15, and it's emblazoned on my head on the Feast of Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception. Okay, the role of Our Lady, she takes care. I mean, I'm an Italian mother. Okay, she's a perfect model for all mothers, but us, it was emblazoned in us. She's there. She's in our home. We had an altar for her in our home. We had an altar outside, a huge statue outside, and that is in another one of our homes in Florida, as a matter of fact, of Our Lady holding the child Jesus, Theotokos. And that's so important, that it's not Mary per se, it's Mary as her role. And her role is to Theotokos, to carry God to us, to bring us God. She is the mother of God. Without carrying Jesus, without being his mother, she was a nice lady. That made all the difference in the world. When she gave her assent to the angel Gabriel, the announcer, the angelos, the messenger, "Yes, let it be done to me according to your word," she became like number one. That's why this responsorial psalm makes so much sense. "You are the highest honor of our race." she became the #1 woman of humanity. And I don't know if we don't, I think about it, but some people don't think about that too much. She gave us her son, who happened to be the Son of God. I mean, that makes her so special. And I think all of us, mothers and children of mothers, have to hold her in high esteem. Her example of love, her example of patience, her example of humility. And she wasn't, I want to say like humility, I want to use that word correctly. She was humble because she knew who she was. She was a strong woman who knew who she was. And in that, she found humility. And I think one of the examples of her humility is when Jesus got lost, what they thought was lost in the temple. And where were you? We were looking for you, she says to him. And he says, didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house? And she took, and the gospel tells us, she took these things and brought them into her heart. And she pondered them. So she didn't give him a whack, which my mother would have done, I'm sorry. But she humbly accepted this kid's, precocious as he was, words and insight. And of course, she knew his origins. He was promised to her. And as the scriptures say, from every day forward, her name is blessed. So we honor Mary, any of us, all of you who are mothers, and all of us who are children of mothers.